international TV station, so my pleasure with you. I have a question. What do you think of Xi Jinping's involvement of 600 billion in Africa?
Sorry, can you?
What do you think of the Xi Jinping involvement of 600 billion in Africa?
The investment of the
Yes.
60 billion?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think China is becoming more and more an important partner of Africa, the African continent, both through its relationships with the bilateral countries, but also with the African Union as an organization. And I think this is just evidence of the strengthening of that relationship. So we look forward to that. Building on that relationship.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
No women in the picture.
If you don't mind, take a picture, please.
Thank you.
He wanted to say something about the event, about your co-sponsoring this event.
Okay. Well, I think what is important is that the mission of Nigeria is happy to be part of this extremely important process, because we are dealing with NGOs that really want to do something practical on the ground. Government agencies have helped, countries have helped, but it has been understood that this kind of work succeeds only when there is strong partnership. And on the ground, around the world, NGOs, local and national, have assisted, because the crisis is a complex one. And to have the African Union, the mission of Nigeria, supported also by the missions of the 4 countries from the Lake Chad region, tells you how important this is and how successful. And you can see the success. People are here, they have given extremely important ideas about what to do, so that we are not talking about conflict, we are talking about stabilization and development. Everybody has supported this, and the NGOs in particular.
Thank you so much, Excellency.
Hi, how are you? You should meet this ambassador. I wanted you particularly to meet this man. It'll take 1 second. He's handling the building all over First Avenue that Mr. Solo bought. He is handling the whole deal. Yeah. You have a card quickly? Well, he'll give you his. Okay. Hi, George.
Hi.
Okay, good.
Stop talking. Oh, good. Yeah, because it's so hard. Yes.
That's a lot of pictures.
No.
Christmas story. You can win.
Okay.
I think I need.
You just need to connect to the map.
It's already connected. You see how the screens are back
Yeah.
here?
Since we have a limited amount of time, I'll very briefly highlight concerns which most of you are very much aware of. First of all, the issue of climate change and big change. Stabilize socioeconomic fabric of the region. And this is kind of fed into, I would say, vicious cycle. Because first of all, we have the issue of climate change, and then of course the socioeconomic crisis of the region, and then of course violent issues. And because of this, population growth, particularly the youth bulge, the youth in the region despite this, I think there are challenges, but I think there are also and there is a way forward. But in order for us to address these issues, we must resilient communities, and we must be able to tackle political interventions. So here I would just like to very briefly say that the SDGs, achieving the SDGs is possible, but we must do it collectively. And I would just like to highlight very briefly 3 or 4 key points. First of all, we have to look into enhancing our regional and global partnerships. There can be an exchange of resources for education, for health systems, for social benefits, looking at how these work in other regions, and looking at regional environmental stewardship for improved management of shared natural resources. Secondly, we must involve the private sector, as you are proving, and the region should be given priority because governments can't do it alone. The private sector can become not only a financer, but play a key role in shifting capital toward developing these economies. It can play an important role as an implementer, translating profits into sustained economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. The principles underpinning such measures are anchored in the SDGs, and particularly SDG 12.6, which encourages companies, especially large and transnational companies, to adopt sustainable practices to integrate sustainable information into their reporting cycle. Thirdly, the issue of local governance, providing basic services, improving economic opportunity, and strengthening social cohesion, while also restoring people's and institutions' sense of agency and dignity, as well as their ability to adapt to changing circumstances. All this should have a primary focus on women and youth. And furthermore, it is absolute that we focus on building resilience of the people of the region to overcome their losses and forestall any future recurrences. Shoring up the local capacities of the people should be factored into any development model in hastening their communities back to the path of sustainable development. And lastly, I think there are a number of opportunities and a number of initiatives out there, but there needs to be some sort of coherence between the various efforts in the region. All this said, it must be supported by security intervention. We can't run away from that. Without peace, without security, without stability, it is very difficult for us to be able to talk about development issues. So our interventions must work hand in hand, and collective engagement and commitment of the countries involved, and of course with the support of the international community. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me just quickly end this note by saying it is our responsibility to deeply consider viable solutions within the framework of sustainability and resilience, rather than creating dependency within the communities. In essence, there should be a paradigm shift from conventional humanitarian aid projects to projects that are geared more towards developing vulnerable societies, both socially and economically. We must build capacities in order to resolve and break this vicious cycle of conflict, and as well as build resilience towards some of the drastic conditions, especially where climate change is concerned, and we can't run away from that. Climate change is very real. I wish you a successful conference, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I had a question here, and that is, how does the African Union influence the member countries in this regard? Because you presented a very nice vision on this, and how will that transport into how the different countries pursue their policy?
Oh, we can organize an entire conference on this. It's a very loaded question, but I can say very briefly that, you know, where the SDGs are concerned, the AU has Agenda 2063, which is our development model.
Okay.
And our member states, including, of course, countries that are from the region, are all part of this agenda and are implementing it through their national development strategies at various levels. At the regional level, for the Lake Chad countries, and this is linking it, you know, development with the security issues. The African Union is supporting the Lake Chad, is giving support through the Lake Chad Basin Commission, is supporting the MNJTF, of course, with the support of our various international partners. And it is a collective effort. It's not perfect, and we have to continue working collectively within, you know, with a focus on all the various areas: climate change, insecurity, and of course development.
Yeah, I'm sure now we will hear from the ambassadors from each country, and we'll see how they see it. And thank you very much. So, looking at the list, the next speaker will be Ambassador Tijani Mohammed Bande from the Permanent Mission of Nigeria. Is he in the room here? Huh?
Yeah.
He's sitting there. Can you please come up and you come up? That way you be in front of the TV camera, and it will be broadcast around the world on YouTube. And if you speak into this microphone, they will hear what you say also.
I see if I want them to hear.
Is it that button, yeah?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let me, on behalf of the Mission of Nigeria, most sincerely welcome us all to this session. And Mr. Moderator, let me also stand on existing protocol because they are extremely important people. Everybody here is important. And just to welcome all. And to say that I am sure I'm speaking on behalf of Cameroon, Chad, and Niger in saying that the real hosts are these countries. Everyone else is given support because the devastation first and foremost affects these countries. And ours is really to come and really thank you for this great initiative. The devastation brought about by the conflict driven by a number of factors in that region is well known and described as a complex humanitarian situation. There is no question that the only way possible for success is collaboration. And while we are at it, we should state that in the last few years, we have been dealing with more or less a military approach to dealing with the problem because that was the most urgent at the time. We are glad to say, because of the efforts of all of the 4 countries and the support of the international community and also initiatives such as this, and there are many from every village in the region, there are efforts, some known, some unknown. In every country, in the capitals, there are discussions like this concerning what can be done to address what can be addressed in the immediate, and also what things should we think about in terms of longer term approaches. We've had meetings in Abuja, we've had several meetings in Maiduguri, meetings in Oslo, meetings in Berlin, and all is really geared toward the same approach. What support can be given? And support has been given, and results are clear. We are more and more talking about stabilization, and we have a bit of space now through efforts from the Joint Task Force to several others to talk in terms now. We have space to begin to talk in terms of more longer term approaches to solving the problem. NGOs have given a lot of support, both at the local levels and also here. So, in short, for us, this conversation, which in our view adds to ongoing efforts, in terms of looking at how to leverage both long-term and emerging social relationships and also technologies to help address the problems we are facing as a region. Financial elements have been discussed in Berlin, as they have been in Oslo. Governments are devoting huge resources in their budgets to address this. And like was said by the previous speaker, the permanent observer of the AU, the issue is to simply get to the issue of stabilization and development and get out of any notion that any country in the region is talking about dependence on anyone. This is a region itself very well known historically for its cultural connections. You do not really know the difference between Niger or Nigeria or Chad or Cameroon. And that's why it is vitally important that we are able to speak together at the UN level. The 4 permanent representatives of these 4 countries already have a forum to try to pull together their thinking as how best to begin to engage the UN and other partners. And it is in this context that I see that this is an ongoing, extremely important role, and largely it is to thank the partners and the initiatives by NGOs who have, in our real hour of need, shown that we are not alone. I think that's all I want to say on behalf of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Thank you very much. I have a question here also, actually. I found our method is to agree on a philosophy, which is everybody wins with peace, everybody loses with war. Then you have to agree on the vision, and I think here is what we're talking about, the vision. The ambassador from the AU presented a vision, and you presented a vision. How do you coordinate the vision with the African Union to make them that you all agree on the same vision?
Well, you see, the African Union is ours. We are not outside the Union. Yes. And the African Union cannot have a vision that opposes what we have. It is really a vision from us that the AU will say, okay, this is the way we can support it. There is no contradiction over this. In fact, these issues of regional issues, the continent sees itself really as one. It's just administrative convenience. So the Lake Chad region, like I said, is really one cultural zone. You go there, you ask, where is the difference? Let me tell you a short story. When I was in Morocco as head of CAFRAD, the Minister of Public Service, Public Function of Cameroon invited me, one in Zegle, I think it was his name, to Cameroon. And at the end of the program, he was giving us a cultural show. And there was an Italian who was working in my office then, who joined me. So there were two performances. The very first troupe spoke Hausa. The next one spoke Fulfulde. Now I said to him, you see, even in my village in Nigeria, it is the two languages spoken. And this was in Cameroon. So you see, so this is just to tell you we are dealing with really one cultural zone. So really it is what it is. So there is no contradiction whether within the region itself or relating to the West and Central Africa zone and the AU. And our heads of state are extremely invested in what happens at the AU.
Yeah, but if, of course, the African Union cannot dictate. Sorry, African Union cannot dictate, but the members of the African Union or the members in this conference, are you on the same vision?
This conference here?
Yeah.
No, you see, the AU has always worked, from what I know of it, I've never worked for the AU, but I've been a scholar of the continent. Okay. And the whole idea that civil society has a role has been well understood from the 80s. And so anyone who has something to offer, but offer it in a very clear way. Why I say clear way? Because the issue is simply, if you want to support, we need to know who you are, who is funding you, what do you want to bring to the table, with whom are you partnering. And once these are clear, the AU has no problem, neither has Nigeria, which I represent, any problem. International NGOs are many in the country. We even have a coordinating body dealing with international NGOs. We have debates as to how international NGOs will work better in coordination with national NGOs. There's nothing unusual.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we of course want to give thank you. We're going to give an opportunity for everybody to speak. So the next speaker will be His Excellency Abdallah Wafi, Ambassador of Niger. Welcome. Thanks.
I will make my remarks in French.
In French, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Moderator, Excellencies, Madam and ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, so firstly allow me to open by thanking warmly on behalf of the permanent mission of Niger, the people who have organized this very important meeting today. It's an important meeting because it has to do with a region which is very dear to us and which also in itself symbolize all the challenges that we are facing today in Africa. I think the video we saw at the beginning, which was a beautiful video, gave the right, angle here. And today in the Lake Chad Basin region, we are subjected to the changes of the climate change. We have armed conflicts. We have also the issue of vulnerable people and the humanitarian crisis. But you also have violences, to the most vulnerable people, including women and children. So it is very important from the point of view of my government that this region is made secure, is stabilized, and so that we can finally, get out of this very precarious situation, so that we can really start the development era of this region. So I would like to thank very much all the speakers so far, all of those who have spoken, and all the partners for the very important work that is being done to help and support our country to implement the SDGs. My sister Fatima Kari Mohammed said it very well today. The shared vision shared by all the countries of the, are shared by the countries of the region. But beyond that, through the African Union, through the Agenda 2063, which is an agenda that all the African countries, including the 4 countries that we're talking about today, have adopted, which has to do with the implementation of clear goals, and that's not only an issue of national policy, but a national priority, because we are very aware, in fact, we are very convinced, and that the strictly military and the security answer is not sustainable unless we start a development. Again, we strengthen the resilience of the people on the ground. In general, in this region, in general, and the Sahel region in this region, is often seen through a distorted field, and we see it as a region that is destabilized through conflicts and other things. But in fact, it's a region with exciting and incredible opportunities, and I say really exciting because the ground, in this region is full of mining wealth and natural wealth. We have an opulence of resources, oil, gas, and minerals, and so we have to see this region as a region with a fantastic opportunities. Today, we need to support all the countries involved, and with the countries in the surrounding area, so that we can support this effort of development. That is how we see how these SDGs must be implemented in this region, and therefore my government, of course, is delighted to see that we have this meeting today, which we believe will allow to have a better understanding of our priorities, but also to see how we are going to implement those SDGs through a coordinated approach, as my brother from Nigeria said, through a collaborative approach between the various countries involved, because we have, the authority of the Lake Chad Basin, which is very involved in the implementation of the common policies for the people and for the in these regions. Therefore, we have a common approach, integrated approach, including on the security and military level to end the security issues, and also, and that is the most important goal, to stabilize this region through real development projects, and in particular the implementation of the SDGs. Therefore, and that is why when I was heard I was invited to this conference, I immediately accepted to support it, and I would like to tell you one more time on behalf of my government that I thank you for this invitation, how grateful we are for your support, but also I'm here to tell you that my government is fully determined and to implement those recommendations, the recommendations that will be expressed, so that we can move forward in the implementation of the SDGs. Thank you for your kind attention.
Excellency Michel Thomas Mothi, Ambassador of Permanent Mission of the Republic of Cameroon. He's not here? Oh, who? Okay.
Monsieur le modérateur, mes chers collègues, mesdames.
Mr. Moderator, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, my country is delighted that we are organizing this meeting dedicated to the implementation of the SDGs in the Lake Chad Basin, where, because we can have a debate about our shared experiences so that we can strengthen the humanitarian partnerships that we have created and for the development of that region. As you know, the SDGs, the Agenda for 2030, which was adopted in September 2015 by the 193 member states of the United Nations, aims at mobilizing all countries throughout the world to put an end to all forms of poverty, to fight against inequalities, to fight against climate change, to promote partnerships, so that we all together move forward and create the future that we want, putting mankind at the center of our concerns and protecting at the same time our planet, which is our only place that we can on which we can live. And the Lake Chad Basin is actually caught in a vicious cycle right now, and there are many challenges facing this region. They are complex, they are connected, and the region is facing a number of crises that are all combined, which are some of the most devastating of our time and make the situation very precarious in the region. The most, illustration, the best illustration of this precarity, which is the reduction of the superficie. So we went from 26,000 square kilometers, in the 1960 to less than 1,500 recently. And in addition to this ecological situation, we need to mention that the intervention, the presence of Boko Haram, and the dynamics of the conflicts have also increased the vulnerability of the people in that region, which was very prosperous in the past, actually. And the persistence of this crisis, affects deeply and is detrimental to agriculture, fishery, and the means of living of the population. The restriction to freedom of movement, to commerce, to local governments, makes that 10 million people need urgent humanitarian assistance. That means, Mr. Moderator, that we are clearly facing multiplicity of crises that call for appropriate and sustainable solutions. These solutions must tackle the deep and root causes of the issues, such as as was promised by the 2349 resolution of the Security Council of 2017, and having taken full measures of the situation, the Cameroonese authorities have decided to strengthen the operational system that has been put in place to secure the affected regions that were affected by conflicts, and to protect the population. A number of measures by the government aiming at improving the living conditions of displaced population in the region of the extreme north was adopted, and a humanitarian emergency plan at the national level has been put together and deployed to assist these vulnerable people and strengthen the prevention mechanism of crises and the inclusive development in the region of the extreme north of Cameroon. Part of the measures of this humanitarian emergency plan, which has been decided in 2014, the government of Cameroon has implemented an emergency plan and a plan to reorganize the territory for the northern part of the country. And this plan, which is aims at replying to the exaction by Boko Haram, is an emergency plan, which will cost 5 billion CFA francs, or roughly $2 million. It aims at increasing the continuity so that the people can survive and blossom in this part of the country beyond the efforts, deployed by the various governments of the region of the Lake Chad Basin, which call for more synergies, the amplification, and to look more at the needs of the people. Looking more at the needs of the people require obviously more resources, and we also need more funds and financing to implement the emergency and humanitarian plans, also for the purpose of development that have been put together by the partners. For its part, Cameroon, which benefits from the support of many bilateral and multilateral partners, as well as from humanitarian agency from United Nations on the ground, is determined to continue to contribute within the constraint that it puts its limit, contribute to help the population of the region. I would like to take the opportunity of this discussion today to call upon all of our partners to strengthen their support, and especially by fostering multilateralization of resources and means, and by supporting massively, and providing necessary funds that are necessary to have resilience, so that we can help the affected region. So that means funding a socio-economic project aiming at helping the population of the region. That is also true, for the conference of the member states of the Conference of the Lake Chad, which was organized in Abuja in April 2018, which has set up a number of ambitious projects for the development of the region. My country, knows that it can count on the unwavering support of the international community, and this is the place to repeat the major thanks of my government to our partners for their commitment to work with us and to support us in this fight. The mobilization of more than 1 billion of euros in favor of Lake Chad during the Berlin conference on September 3 and 4. 2014 is a perfect testimony of that effort and that support. I would like to conclude, Mr. Moderator, by saying that maybe we have spoken too long or too much. We should maybe move on now to action, concrete action. Nous avons déjà conçu les et donc maintenant
action in conformity with the vision enshrined in the program of development in the Horizon 2013, which means people center, planet center, prosperity for all, partnership, ownership, and also nobody left behind.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we have the ambassador of Chad, Ali Alifei Mustafa.
I wish from the onset, on behalf of, to thank everybody for the organization of this event, which is a platform of exchange and discussion around Lake Chad. As was said by my sister Fatima, who is from the region and from the other side of the region, that means that the 4 countries that surround Lake Chad have common not only the problems that are there currently, but also share a long history of civilization that made this region a region of prosperity for many years. Today, this region has become the center of interest of several international actors, NGOs, for the simple reason that there's a profound humanitarian crisis that is affecting the area. This crisis, which is first of all a security one, extended to the areas of education, nutrition, health, and internal displacement of persons, which brought about a disaster in the zone. I will not go into the details of the ecological impacts that these conflicts have had, and indeed have interfered with the ecosystems of our region. We have in Chad distinctive of buffaloes that are going to be distinct around Lake Chad. Since the beginning of the crisis around Lake Chad, had to migrate to the other areas, and indeed the most striking phenomenon of the crisis, including the vulnerability of this crisis. What we have, the damages that we have seen in the video, are just part of the are other disasters that are more profound and affected the region that populations are suffering from. I would not like to touch on only the difficulties, but I want to talk about the resilience of the populations that live in those areas and who have the courage and the combat nature to fight against all these issues, and which has become a character of the region. The resilience, the fight, and the conviction of these populations, and particularly women, who continue to fight every day to combat all these difficulties and to break this cycle. These populations know that the region of Lake Chad is an opportunity land, and therefore a reservoir of opportunities despite the current climate change impact. So we need to support these populations and their wish and willingness to fight and forge on and to reverse the events, and to give them the capacity in order to combat on their land and to preserve and regenerate the values that have made this zone as a profound source for the civilization. We would like then to pay tribute to the international community support that has been given to this region. We need to go beyond humanitarian aid and move towards development and towards solutions that are best adapted to these populations, to equip them with the necessary tools. The development of these opportunities will provide to the population the current challenges that they face, be it insecurity, malnutrition, or illiteracy, to work through this and find the sources and the roots that can help them strengthen the populations in a sustainable manner, and like to pay tribute to the international NGOs and the local NGOs in their and the partnership, which is very active, indeed, which is between the national actors of the four countries and to work with them within Chad and the different actors in the region. As my brother just said, Ambassador of Cameroon, the national ownership indeed is the base of the success, and all different activities that have come to the area have come in to support this, which is why it is very important for the local populations to be actors of their own development and destiny, which is why I'd like to again congratulate and recognize the involvement of the Al-Najad, which has then supported the advocates of the populations, and indeed the different international organizations, as well as Al-Janad, the NGO that has worked together with this, which is why we feel that this synergy between the different actors, the civil society, the NGOs, and indeed can bring about in outcomes that can support the Lake Chad in achieving its future in a prosperous and radiant manner, and to take its place within the global and world as well as the African continent. I thank you. Okay, this is very important. Thank you. Maybe in front of the sign.